And today our title reading is Deeds versus Intentions. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Brahmachari Yogananda. Jesus Christ emphasized repeatedly the spirit, not the letter of the law. In chapter 5 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, he speaks of the sin of killing and of the legal punishment attendant on that sin, but says that more important than the act is the desire to kill or to do harm. He shows that the sin of harmful desire goes beyond merely wanting to kill. And quote from the Bible, "My message to you," Jesus said, "is this. Whoever is angry with his brother without cause already stands condemned. Whoever contemptuously calls his brother a fool shall answer for it to the Supreme Council. And whoever calls his brother an outcast of God shall be in danger of hellfire." Brother here means any other human being. For all of us, in the highest sense, are brothers and sisters, children of our one Father, Mother, God. The true self of one is the self of all. To hurt another is, even if one doesn't realize it, to hurt oneself. Swami Kriyananda, in The Path, recalls an episode in which the master, Paramahansa Yogananda, revealed his sense of identity even with the plants. One day, Kriyananda wrote, we were moving a delicate but rather heavy tropical plant into position on the hillside. Our handling evidently was too rough, for Master cried out, "Be careful what you are doing. Can't you feel? It is alive." To wish death to anyone, to wish even harm to another creature, is to deny in oneself the reality of that divine life of which all of us are manifestations. It is, in short, to deny the eternal truth proclaimed by the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter. Quote, "This self is never born, nor does it perish. Once existing, it cannot ever cease to be. It is birthless, eternal, changeless, ever itself. It is not slain when the body is slain." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Well, it's nice to be with people once more for our sort of last group gathering together, this Sunday service. And many of you were there yesterday. And this is an interesting topic, deeds versus intentions. And as is traditional, I want to read a poem of Yogananda's as we start our Sunday service talk. And this is from his book, Songs of My Soul, Songs of the Soul. This is called One Friend. Many clouds do race to hide thee, of friends and wealth and fame, and yet through mists of tears I see thee. I see appear thy golden name. Each time my father, mother, friends do loudly claim they did me tend, I wake from sleep to sweetly hear that thou alone didst help me here. And that's just a nice, sweet poem that Master used to say, God is the one friend behind all friends, the father behind the father, the mother behind the mother, and the lover behind the lover. And I just want to talk a little bit about today's topic, deeds versus intentions. And as you'll see, it's a tricky topic. By the way, I must say, it was when we were doing the purification, it was very interesting when Patrick was in front of me, and just for him, as the ceremony was happening, I could hear an airplane fly over. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. He's an airplane pilot, for those of you who know or don't know. So, well, I think everybody will fly high with these teachings. But, but you know, Swami used to say, and he had a very good sense of humor, but it's also the reality. He would say the dice are loaded against us. And we talked about this yesterday just a little bit, in the sense that it's easy to slip and harder to pick get one's act together. You know, it's easy to, and this is why the traditional Christians, what do they say? The gate to hell is a highway, and the gate to heaven is a, I mean, it says in the Christian Bible, narrow is the road and straight is the gate that leads to heaven, and the other side, not so much. It's 5 lanes or 6 lanes, whatever. But anyway, what I realized here with deeds versus intentions is Swami focuses in this saying, in this sharing, on one aspect of it, which is it's not necessary that we commit a wrong deed. It's enough to intend to do that, you know. And the example Jesus here was giving is not about actually doing something physically wrong. You know, even if you get angry in your mind, you already committed sort of an error, because you forget that the other person is your brother in God. And Swami, in the autobiography of a yogi, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, says the same thing to Yogananda. This is the classic story where Yogananda is sitting to listen to his guru, and a mosquito bites him, and Yogananda immediately wants to squelch the mosquito, but remembers, well, Patanjali said you have to practice ahimsa, non-violence. So I shouldn't be killing this mosquito. And Sri Yukteswar, who was observing not just his act, probably the raised hand, but also the thought processes, said, why don't you complete the deed? And he says, complete the deed? I didn't do anything yet. And he says, well, in your mind, you already struck the blow. And so the physical act is simply the next step. But what Patanjali meant was you take away the desire to hurt. You know, and he actually goes on to say, as I was saying yesterday, it's not this or that. And then he goes on to tell Yogananda, but you can practice ahimsa and still squelch the mosquito. And don't ask me how or why, because that's not the theme of this particular sharing. But it's true. It's true. That's why righteous wars are not a violation of non-violence. And these are topics that can be discussed as separate things. But coming back here, I said the dice are loaded, because this is what this particular saying focuses on. For something that's wrong, if you think about it, it's enough. Wrong intentions are enough. The deeds aren't necessary. But when it comes to talking about the things we should do, intentions are not enough. The deed is necessary. You know, if you say, I intend to meditate, not enough. Like I said, the dice are loaded. That's why when people receive Kriya Yoga, what's the vow you take? I will. Not I intend to. And this is where I meant, you know, on one side, when the error is concerned, even thinking about things that you shouldn't do is enough to get you barred, let's say. But when it's the right things that we're supposed to do, it's not enough to just say, oh, I'm going to do this, you know. It wasn't enough to intend to buy this place. The deed had to be signed, you know, quite literally. So, and everything had to manifest. And so we want to remember both these aspects. And I want to focus a little bit on the positive side, because that's how we reach the goal, which is self-realization. That if we have certain intentions on the spiritual path, And we have to fulfill them one step at a time. It's not enough to have good intentions. When I was mentioning to Nayaswami Jaya, he was driving me here, he dropped me at Sacramento airport. I said, this is what I'm going to talk about. He started laughing and he said, you know what they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And he was laughing and laughing, and good, not bad intentions. Good intentions, G-O-O-D. And he was laughing and laughing. By the way, there's no such thing as hell as understood traditionally by Christianity. Hell is simply being in a world of duality where you don't know whether you are living today, dying tomorrow, something else happens, you have no idea what's going to shock you. There's no worse hell than that, because and heaven is that state where you're in perpetual bliss, that joy which cannot be taken away. And so those both states can be experienced right here on this planet. And so it's not up there after death that we go into either of those places. It's a state of consciousness. So coming back here, I want to focus a little bit on doing what we say we will do. And this is an important principle of the spiritual path. And this is where, English words they have particular meanings, and it's important not to misinterpret them, because the affirmation for today was on patience. Now, patience is different from procrastinating. And it's different from stalling. Sometimes people read patience to think, okay, it's a slow process and it takes time, I've got to be patient. But it's not stalling, it's when an engine stalls, something's wrong there. And so we have to be doing our part, knowing that this is a gradual process, but we have to be very intense in our desire to want to do this. And there's a few stories where Yogananda Swami illustrated in his own life what this deed, actually performing what we want to do, especially when it comes to our spiritual path, is important. And then I'm also going to share, there's very nice ways to get to that level, no matter where we are at. We don't have to be at this superhuman level where we are already doing everything we set our heart to. But the example that Swami often says was when he was with Yogananda, they were having a conversation after a lunch or a dinner, and there was a spoon or a fork, I forget what it was, lying on the table. And Yogananda was trying to flip the fork or the spoon, because it's curved, into the glass. And it would fall everywhere else but the glass. But he kept trying. And so I forget if Swami said it was 50 tries or whatever, until it fell into the glass and cracked the glass. But Yogananda was happy. He said, I got it in. That's what matters. And Swami felt that Yogananda was telling him, once you set your heart to something, accomplish it. Don't give up. And Swami was very good at that, because his life was not an easy one. And the example that comes to my mind is when he was in India. In 2003, he was already 76 years of age at that time, and somebody offered him this prime television spot. We have some channels where you can share spiritual teachings, and on one of the best channels at the best time, he was offered this spot for sharing about this path. And he was all for it, because he said, if I travel, I can meet a few hundred people at a time. And at this age, I can't even do that because I'm getting older. But through television, I can reach millions, not just in India, but in many other places where it's broadcast. And so they wanted him to do 365 episodes of that program, 20 minutes each or 25 minutes each. And he only had 1 month to do it. And he was reading from Conversations with Yogananda, that book, and he set his mind saying, I'm going to do it. But more and more started getting overwhelming, because that wasn't the only thing that was drawing his attention. He was focusing on so many other projects. And Asha tells very sweetly, she was trying to tell Swami, it's okay, it's fine if you can't do it, you're already doing so much and so forth. And somehow Swami was bristling at that advice. And then when Jyotish and Devi came to visit, Swami was asking the same question, what should I do? I just don't know if I can do it. And Jyotish bluntly said, well, you said you'd do it, so you have to do it. There's no two ways. And Swami was so happy. He said, that's what I wanted to hear. And he completed it. Those are some of the best television series or series of episodes that he recorded for the TV that I have seen. They are called A Way to Awakening. They are still on YouTube. You can watch them there. And those were some of the most important things that brought me to the spiritual path. But I want to mention this because it's important to have the willpower to carry the act out once we decide we are going to do something. This is how Yogananda was. Swami trained himself in little ways. He would say, if I said I would do something like get the newspaper, even if somebody gave me the newspaper, I would go get it. And that one was a hard one for me to swallow, because that's extreme. But that, he said, is because once you start doing what you say you do, your word starts becoming binding on the universe. This is, as Patanjali says, this is the reward of always being truthful, sticking by your word. The other side, which is not mentioned, is also true. The less we keep our word, even to ourselves, the less our words have power. We start losing that power. That's why, if you remember, if you have ever seen any mythological Indian television series which have the rishis and the sages, they are very guarded in what they say, because their word is their life force. Basically it's impregnated with their life force and it has to come true. They've trained themselves that way. But coming back, how do we get there from here? Because I think many people have complex lives, and rightly so. And there's a few ways to get to that point where it's not just our spiritual intentions that we carry, but also we can take care, ensure that we can do our meditations, do our sadhanas. And it starts at the start of the day. How we wake up is very important. And I often tell people, get out of bed energetically with the mental affirmation that now I need to be careful here. If you are married and you have a spouse, don't just start jumping out of bed from tomorrow with a loud affirmation and they'll have no idea what happened. But coming back, the affirmation I say is very simple. I am a yogi. Or I am a disciple, or I am a Kriya Yogi. A simple affirmation, because we have to take care of all our life responsibilities, all the many realities that intersect. But what's the central reality? That's what will determine the direction we are heading. And as a yogi, you can still do all the things you have to do. You can be a spouse, you can be earning an income, you can be a pilot, a dentist, a real estate broker, and whatever else people do, all the good things that people do. But if somebody asks you, who are you? Well, when somebody really asks you, don't say I'm a yogi, because that will just come across as too much. But in your heart, yeah, these are things you do secretly, because otherwise people start pulling your leg unnecessarily. But in your heart, you have to say, I'm a yogi. And from that center, I'm taking care of all these responsibilities and doing them well. It's not about doing them half-heartedly. The mark of a yogi is he does whatever is given to him very well. And Sri Yukteswar trained Yogananda that way, because he writes in that chapter that he had assumed that if you are a deep devotee of God, you can be half-hearted or lackadaisical in the way you do things. And Sri Yukteswar was not happy with that. He wanted Yogananda's actions to be perfect. In fact, one of Yogananda's own disciples, Mrinalini Mata, who then became the SRF president after Daya, she came to Yogananda at the age of 17 because her mom brought the whole family, to him. And Yogananda told Mrinalini something very interesting. He said, you can stay here under one condition. You have to ace all your exams. You have to come first in your class. So here she's for spiritual training, for no other reason. But for some reason, he wanted her to have that discipline. He didn't say that to everybody. But just so we know, we have to take care of our life's responsibilities well. But when you wake up, tell yourself, I'm a yogi. And from that center, I'm going to do all the things I'm supposed to do. And then the other thing also is based on something that's in the Bhagavad Gita. Swami used to say the sweetness of the Bhagavad Gita is that it allows us to rise one step at a time from wherever we are. And Krishna says this: immerse your consciousness in me alone. Direct all your discrimination toward finding me. Beyond any doubt, then you shall come for me. And that's too much for most people. So he goes one notch lower and he says, if you cannot absorb your thoughts in the contemplation of me, then practice the techniques of yoga intended to help develop that concentration, which we talked about in the previous verse. And that's probably what we do. If somebody can just sit there and be deeply focused 100% on God, they would go into samadhi. If we can't do that, then we practice the techniques of yoga. But then he says, okay, if that doesn't happen, then what do you do? This is very important because all of us play with this. If, however, you find yoga practice too difficult, and that doesn't just mean sitting there is difficult, but schedules are hard, you have a difficult time having your life very organized, then what do you do? Then perform every action in the thought of me. And by me, Krishna means in the thought of God. By this means too shall you achieve final success. So perform every action with the thought of the divine. And then he doesn't even stop there. He says, but if even while active you cannot think of me, then give me your intentions. Ever striving to discipline your mind, offer to me the fruits of your labor. And then in the commentary, Swami Kriyananda says, every thought that is uplifted to the Lord becomes in time purified and strengthened. That word, as and strengthened. So the thing is, wherever we start, if we do whatever we can at that level, we gain the strength to do more. And then we gain the strength to do even more, and we gain the strength to do something even better. So this is very important. It's not either or. Even somebody who has a strong meditation practice should be doing these other things. And people who are doing these other things would benefit from a strong meditation practice because it takes you into the spine, the highway to self-realization. But whatever action we do, this is what I meant, be a yogi. And from that center, whether you are a teacher, how do you teach? Whether you're a mother or a father, offer that activity and play that role on behalf of the divine. Whether you're a pilot or you are drilling a hole in somebody's teeth and they're shaking in pain, I mean, they won't do that because they have the anesthesia. And any other thing that you do, you are sharing spiritual teachings, you are running a shop, you are running to catch a bus, whatever it is you are doing, you can do it on behalf of the divine. And what happens? It's not that God is happy when these things are done and unhappy when we don't do this. Our goal of self-realization starts coming to the forefront of our mind all time of the day. And as that happens, the desire for liberation gets fanned. What you think about morning, noon, and night is what your heart is absorbed in. This is just the law. And the more that happens, the more you want to do other things. You want to meditate. You find those quiet times where you can sneak in and have a short meditation. When you find time, you'll start humming a chant. You'll start wanting to learn how to chant. Everything follows. Every thought that is offered to the Lord gets strengthened in time. So it's something to experiment with. We sometimes play down in our mind, oh, well, but I'm not meditating. What's the good of doing all these other things? Well, if you do all these other things, you won't not be meditating very quickly. That is the divine law. And so wherever we are, let's take some of these possibilities to heart. And wherever you are in your station in life, it's not easy for everybody to have long hours of meditation, but everybody can get there. This is one step at a time. So remembering that deeds are necessary. If we can't meditate, let's do those deeds on the level of whatever service we are doing, offering them to the divine. That's a deed done on behalf of the divine. And as we do that, we approach freedom very, very quickly. We change very, very quickly because we get strengthened. So it's a joy. It's been wonderful being here, and it's nice that you guys signed this deed and have this center. And we'll have many more joyous things happening here in the years to come. So thank you all.